He's going to the moon. I got that. I got
Oh,
that.
yeah. To
The moon.
the
Him
to the
and
moon and back, Alice.
who is it? The car guy there, Senator Pertzlick's friend, electric car.
Oh,
Elon
yes.
Musk.
Elon.
Yeah, here you
Oh.
go. That's right. He's going to be on the first trip. I know Senator Pertzlick's going to be on with him. He'll be on the first trip with him. But
He just had another rocket that kind of blew up.
he's
didn't he?
having a great time. Okay, we're back live, and our Senate Transportation Committee is here, and I think we're going to continue our overview with Anthea this morning. Thank you very much. My wife delivered me a cup of coffee, if that's all right. Okay. Okay, go right ahead, Anthea.
Okay, so for the record, Anthea Dexter Cooper from the Office of Legislative Counsel, and I'm going to pick up where we left off yesterday, which is at section 3. The one thing I'm going to do before that is, since Chris has provided you with these really great summary tables, but those are not actually part of the bill, and I'm just going to use this mostly for the new members as a reminder that the binder is what is actually attached to the bill, not Chris's summary charts, and just quickly show you where, if you don't want to pull out your binder, you can find the information on the agency's website, and then show you the particular tabs that are amended or sort of at issue throughout the T-bill, because while not a lot is changing, it's sometimes helpful to see what is in the binder, and then point out one thing that the agency does once the T-bill is fully enacted. And then I'll jump to section 3. So Liz, thank you for giving me sharing access. So if you go to the Agency of Transportation's website, the main page, and you scroll down to under what we do, and you click on budget, that will take you to the fiscal year 2022 transportation program governor recommend. That is your binder. And then it also has the as passed versions from prior years. While this binder is filed with the T-bill and becomes part of the official record, the agency will go in and actually update the electronic version of the binder that's posted on the website. So if you click on one of the earlier ones, you're actually going to see the binder with the amendments that are made in that year's T-bill. So that's a useful thing if you need a refresher from what happened in years past. If you click on fiscal year 2022 transportation program, you'll see it broken out by each of the different tabs in the binder. And then at the very end, you've got the entire document that if you wanted to do like a control F search, that's usually pretty useful. But the tabs that are sort of going to come up as we're talking about the language in the T-bill are going to be tab 15, the town highway structures program. And for a refresher or a new piece of information, this is one of the 2 town programs that were paused last year as part of the COVID response. So you'll see that the fiscal year 21 appropriated and the fiscal year 21 estimated are lower by quite a bit than the fiscal year 22 request, and this is the governor's recommend, and lower than the out years. So this 12 million number here reflects the resumption of the pause plus some. And then when you heard Representative Lanford talk about the statutory changes that they were making, that's going to change the numbers in the out years going forward because the minimum is different. So tab 15 is one to keep in mind. Same with tab 16, the town highway class 2 roadway program. That's the other town program that was paused last year. Other page to keep in the back of your mind is tab 19. This is the town highway aid. That's the one that Chris said there was going to be that 3 million one-time bump to, and that won't be reflected here. It'll be reflected in a different section, but this is where you're getting your town highway aid page. You'll also remember yesterday when I was going through section 1, I said there was a typo that needed to be corrected. That's on this page, and it really is just a typo. You'll see that the grants for fiscal year 21 estimated are at 27,100,000 and change. Same for the total. The number that's being changed is this transportation fund number and the total number. That really needs to be 27,105,769. So that's what's happening in section 1C. Other tab to be aware of is this 5 million one-time transportation fund. This is the $5 million that was proposed in the electric vehicle initiatives. This is what is being bumped up to just under 10 million with that additional 4.775 million to include the 3 million to town highway aid and the other initiatives. This is tab 27, which if you look in prior binders, you won't see a tab 27. This is a new thing this year to account for this one-time proposal. The other tab to highlight is the maintenance tab. And this, you had quite a bit of information from Chris on. This is where you're going to see that one swap from the 4,775,000 in state to federal. And that is where we're going to start with section 3, which is where you get the statutory language making that swap. So switching back to the bill, section 3, highway maintenance, you'll see that in the top part of the chart, which is how the money can be spent, not the source of the money, there is no change. Personal services is staying at the governor's recommend, operating expenses, grants, and the total, this 103,519,000 number. The source of funds is changing, and on lines 9 and 10 is where you're getting your swap of the 4,775,000. And as Chris mentioned, that's coming from the December federal bill, the 50.4 million that went to the state.
And I scroll back, the heading on that is maintenance, highway maintenance. Okay,
Yeah.
It was split. I couldn't see the heading for section 3. Thank
Highway
you.
maintenance, both for the reader assistance heading and the section heading.
Mhm.
Section 4, this is where you're getting some language about town highway aid. Town highway aid is going to appear there will be language about it in the big bill as it made it over from the House. What this language is doing is it's really providing just a tickler and a reminder that the total amount that's going to go to town highway aid, even though this 3 million is going to be reflected in this one-time bucket, town highway aid, the full pot that's divvied up in the apportionments that are in statute 19 VSA section 306A3 and the uses that it can be, what it can be used for, everything is done under the statute. And this number is now going to be $30,105,769. Important language, which follows what was done last year when there was the 7 million one-time increase to town highway aid, is in subsection B. And that's to make sure that this isn't increasing the floor for future years. So in that statute, 19 VSA section 306, it talks about how it's the difference between the two most prior fiscal years that have been closed. And that is the calculation for the escalation to have this amount grow. This 3 million, much like the 7 million from fiscal year 21, is not included in that calculation to keep it as a one-time bump. That's a policy decision, and it's consistent with the policy decision that was made in prior years. So that's the real importance for section 4 is in 4B. Should I?
Do we want to discuss this at any as a committee? It seems like this is doing what we want. It's really taking this, treating it as one time and making it clear it's not going to be part of the base calculation. To me, that is important language.
Oh, yeah, we don't want to put it in the base. It's all about the base. Yes, go ahead.
I would like to hear you sing that whole song sometime.
Yeah, I'll do the whole thing. I'll do the
I'd like to see, actually, I'd like to see the dance instead.
Yeah. I'd pay for that.
I'll do the
My question, maybe, Anthea, can you remind me, there's all the different town highway sections, bridges, roads, and then there's town highway aid, and then there's the municipal mitigation grant. And it's the town highway aid that has the formula, which was supposed to kind of increase a little bit every year that since I've been here, we've been notwithstanding. But can you just describe like those different town highway programs a little bit? Now, maybe it's a AOT question, but I'm just getting them a little bit confused in my head, like the difference between the town highway aid and then the local roads grants and
Town highway aid is mileage, isn't it?
Yeah.
based on
So
that.
I
Mhm.
think you're gonna get a better answer from the agency, but I'm gonna give you this like very big picture thing to keep in mind is those are grant programs. So there's not this guarantee the municipality is gonna get money each year under town highway structures or the class 2 roadway program. And it sounds like there is sort of you have a turn and it's done in sort of an orderly way. And that's administered by the Agency of Transportation. Town highway aid is a big pot of money. The amount is set in statute and it escalates from year to year. And within that statute, it has a formula for how it's divvied up amongst the towns based on mileage and then mileage within the different classifications of town highway. So that is something that happens every year in a sort of routine, predictable way. And the agency has, and I believe Chris might have actually sent a link to this, has a chart that breaks it out by each municipality and the distance of road and how much they get and how much extra they'll get with this $3 million bump. So this is the one that goes to all municipalities in this distributed way under a statutory formula.
So the 3 million will be basically pro rata to buy roads to all the towns as a one-time thing, not to influence the base. And do we have what the base would be this year? Are we starting with that, or have we already not withstood that?
So this was going to be the one year that Lenny was going to get to not have the notwithstanding language. And then the administration accidentally included it in their policy language proposal. And Lenny was like, no, this year we did it. We did what the amount said because it was with the closing out of fiscal year 20 due to COVID, it was going to be level funded from year to year. So that's the $27 million amount. So the agency proposed and the governors recommend exactly what statute said they needed to. Chris has double checked the math on that. The 3 million is over what that statutory amount would have been. And there still needs to be the notwithstanding language because the statutory amount is not a minimum, it's an exact amount for what happens if the closeout is a negative, which is what happened.
They can spend it any way they wish, right?
There's a lot of flexibility.
And
Senator Mazza,
Yes.
I would let you know that Lenny was so upset about this, he retired.
I knew he was going to. Is he left already?
He left at the end of February, yes.
I didn't know that. Oh my God.
Mhm.
And Tammy left as well.
Tammy Ellis, yeah.
Mhm.
Wow.
Wayne Simmons left.
Wow. Wow. My God. You must have got double pay now,
Unfortunately, no.
doing all their work. So just to finish that question, and maybe Michelle, you can help. So it's only the town highway aid that's a grant. I mean, that's a formula grant. Everything else is competitive. The
That's correct.
public assistance grants and the municipal mitigation, those are all people apply for them, and then it's a competitive program.
That's correct.
And those are all funded just as they always have been, basically.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so that is a good segue into the next sections, which deal with the other grants. So I will put the screen back up. So section 5 deals with, because there was that pause in fiscal year 21, this is allowing the agency to reimburse subsequent, so after the fact, to performance of the work, municipalities for projects that do end up getting awarded a grant under either the town highway structures or the class 2 town highway roadway program for costs that were incurred during fiscal year 21. My understanding, and you can get more information on this from the municipalities, is that this is addressing what happened in 6 municipalities where they anticipated that they were going to be getting this grant and they did some work. So this is allowing for the retroactive reimbursement. This section is currently effective on passage. It's, I believe, one of only 2 sections that are specifically called out in the effective dates. I think that this can probably be made effective on 7/1/21, like the rest of the money language. The reason why that had an earlier effective date was because of language that was at one point in section 5, but has been removed. So I don't think it's going to change anything. the language itself, whether it goes into effect on passage or 7/1/21, says that this is something that will happen in fiscal year 2022, and you won't be into fiscal year 2022 until July, but I just figured I would mention it. I don't see anyone.
Okay,
Okay, continuing on. Representative Lamfer went through today when she was talking about increasing the total minimum grant award that needs to happen each year. And she was talking about increasing the pot and her metaphor about spreading the peanut butter. So the first language that you'll see is for state aid for town highway structures. That's increasing the minimum amount in grant awards that needs to go out from $5,833,500 to $7.2 million. So you'll see that number being struck out on line 9. And then a similar increase is happening for the roadway program. That's going from 7.6 million and change to 8.6 million. And you'll see that strike out on lines 5 and 6. Keeping with changing.
And those two increases are part of the 4.775?
No, so this is a statutory change. So this would be going forward. This is the new minimum in the governor's recommend. If you look at tabs 15 and 16, you'll see that the governor is already recommending a significant bump in the appropriation for these two programs this year, one time. Those amounts well exceed what this new statutory minimum would be. But the consideration here is this is going to be something for out years. So this is going to be something that come fiscal year 24, 25, 26, maybe when you're not dealing with a proposed transportation program that has already incorporated that amount, that you might be getting the agency asking to not withstand this language or needing to find the money to have this larger minimum be met from year to year.
And this, the governor's recommending.
This is not a governor's recommend. The governor is recommending, and I'm sure Michelle can jump in if I get this wrong, that for fiscal year 22, more money go to these two programs. It is more than accounting for the pause. And I don't know what their position is on having the out years have this number be larger, but this is something that came from House Transportation. This was an addition that they made.
Okay.
And
And that's all that's happening in section 6? Or-
yes.
Where's the cap being increased? That's in a different section?
That's in section 7. It is actually in a different statutory section, which created a little bit of confusion when I was looking for the cap because I didn't know it was in statute. And as Representative Lamfer mentioned, there is only a cap for one of the programs. So the class 2 town highway roadway cap is set at 175,000. That's on page 10. That is increasing to 200,000. There is no change in the non-existent cap for the structures program, but my understanding is that the agency usually keeps the caps at the same amount. So there's this sort of de facto cap on the structures grant, but I'm sure they can tell you how they would administer this increase. And one thing to be clear on is this is a maximum grant award. It doesn't say all grants will be awarded at 200,000. So if the agency has previously been having grants ranging from $1,000 to $175,000, that's just expanding the window of a grant award amount. It's not saying all of the grants will be 200,000. So the changes that you're getting to these two programs going forward, effective on 7/1/2022 or 7/1/2021, are increase in the total minimum grant award amount that's divvied up, and the cap for the class 2 town highway roadway program is increasing from 175,000 to 200,000, continue to have no cap for the structures program. So a lot of language for those changes.
I may be the only one. I want to go back to the numbers in the prior section. I'm trying to relate them to what Chris's chart. What we're doing then, qualifying, the governor was proposing 5.8, and the House has raised the 5.8 to 7.2.
So this is statute. The governor was actually recommending, and I will open up a tab for this so we can.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time tracking. Was this part of the swap out? I mean, I'm just trying to,
Yeah, so this wasn't reflected in any of Chris's charts because it wasn't really a change. So if you go, and if you have your binder, I saw you had picked it up. If you go
Yeah.
to tab 15
yeah,
and tab 16 in your binder, and I have tab 15 open on the screen, you'll see that for the fiscal year 2022 request, the governor is recommending, and the House is not changing, that almost $13 million go to the structures program. So well over the statutory minimum.
mhm.
And then if you go to the,
But they did, wait a minute. So they didn't change the governor's request.
correct. And they don't need to because the governor's request is already so much higher than what the new statutory minimum would be.
Okay, because we're making up for the pause of last year.
I mean, I think the agency can speak to how they came up with this number. But if you look at what the fiscal year 21 number is, and you look at what they have as their historic out, it looks to be about doubling what the historic out is.
So you go back to what was in the section and the figure there of 7 million something or other.
Yep.
7.2. Where versus where was that? Where tab would I see that?
So you won't see 7.2 on a tab. What you
Because
will-
it's subsequent change.
right, and what you will see is for the out years,
It's less than they're asking for less than the minimum. So that's what Anthea was saying. They might, if we pass this, then they would have to ask, and they keep their recommend at 6.3, then they'd have to not withstand it.
right, so probably what
Yeah.
you'll see in the out years for fiscal year 23 projected, fiscal year 24 projected, fiscal year 25 projected, that's where you would see the 7.2. Because it's the new statutory minimum.
Right now it's 6.3.
Okay.
And that's the historic amount. So it's slightly higher than what the statute requires. So the pieces that are moving here is the governor has already recommended, and House Transportation is not proposing to deviate from that, this one-time fiscal year 22 bump. In addition to that, and separate and apart from what's happening in fiscal year 2022, House Transportation is proposing changes going forward. The changes that they're proposing for going forward, starting with fiscal year 2022, because it would be effective on 7/1/2021, don't change anything about the governor's recommend, because what the governor is recommending is already sufficient to meet what House Transportation is proposing is fiscal year 24 and on. Starting in fiscal year 24, that's when you're going to see maybe the agency saying, we don't think that this is the right amount to give out in grant awards. And that's when you might see notwithstanding language. No need for the notwithstanding language this year.
Assuming that we agree to move it up.
Exactly. And if you keep it just as it is, you could still have the one-time increase to, over 12.5 million for this program as the governor has recommended. Scrap those sections. It would be sections 6 and 7 in the T-bill as it came over from the House, and you would be maintaining the status quo for future years, but still doing maybe something different this year.
If all these
Okay.
proposals go through, we should get 251 letters from towns thanking us. Senator Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, Anthea, no, I forgot what I was going to say after. I guess I'll have to come back to it. I lost my train of thought.
But I think this is something that it isn't reflected in obviously the summary that Chris gave us. And that is, we are making up for the pause last year, but they're also moving forward what would be that threshold out into the future permanently at this particular time to 7.2 million.
Yep,
Um,
7.2 for one and 8.6 for the other.
Right. So I guess, and is there a formula that those get increased?
No,
No, okay. So it's not like this central garage or anything. So the question for us is, at this point in the process, do we want to move those thresholds up in fiscal years beyond FY22, the one that we're doing the plan for?
you got it.
Okay, all right. I was just trying to sort that out. Thank you.
I remember, what I was going to say, and you don't have to change the minimum. You just because you're giving them more money, you don't.
That's right. You don't. That's a
Right.
policy choice, I think that.
But my question is, and I guess it's an AOT question more than you, Anthea, is we're tripling the amount, like in the town highway structures program, but this money can be spent over years. Like if towns can't triple their projects in 1 year, maybe they can, but they have the ability to carry this forward, right?
Yeah. So if they want to throw it into a paving budget because they're matched with the federal paving, the state paving money. That's a good question, Senator Perchlik, and so I'd like to know that as well. Can they? I know with my town, we'd only get the paving money for every 6 years, so we'd put it away and put it away and put it away, and then when we had the match from or the amount from the state, then we would do our paving. So on those lines, with what Senator Perchlik Act, is it that way?
So the town highway aid money, that's the formula funds, that amount goes directly in a check to the town, and they can spend it today, tomorrow, or next year. It's up to them. The town highway class 2 grants and the structures grants are quote unquote competitive. We do those on a kind of a rotating basis. So about every 3 years, a town gets one of those to do a project. And then like last year we had to pause because we had budget uncertainty. And so we'll be catching up with those towns. So they won't get, like if you were in line to get one last year, you're not going to get double the amount. We're shifting everybody, ahead so that we can catch up the program. And so we might award 2 towns instead of 1 in a particular round, or 10, 20 instead of 10 or whatever. But then we'll get back on cycle with everybody. But the line remains the same in terms of the order that these are coming in. We'll just accelerate the cycle so we catch everybody up from last year. Did that answer the questions?
Well, Mike, so you don't have any concerns that the tripling the amount, that amount of work can be done, and they have to do it in the fiscal year 22?
For the town highway aid money?
Yeah, or any of those grant programs. But I'm looking at the town highway structures.
I would think it just means more grants can be given out.
Senator Kitchell is correct. So towns that were anticipating to do a project last year weren't able to do it. The ones that were anticipating to do one this year will be able to get their award. And I think that the amount of money that we put towards the class 2 town highway structures or paving and structures programs isn't really tripled. It's, I think, about doubled. And I might be, yeah, okay, Anthea's shaking her head, yes. And then we increase the town highway aid formula funds, and those can be used for anything within the town highway budget that the town wants to do. So it's kind of 3 different things going on simultaneously. 2 of those things we were going to do anyways, and one of them was delayed. And then one of those things is extra, assuming the towns probably had budget pressures last year and might have had to delay some transportation investments they would have otherwise made. because they were having revenue issues due to COVID. So it's a little bit of a catch up for them on the formula aid monies.
Okay. Well, the structure's grand. Maybe it's not 3 times, but it's 2.5 times or something. It's over in between those two. And can you, Michelle, while you're here, so to speak, I don't really understand how it's a competitive grant, but rotation. So just part of the competitiveness of part of the scoring system is whether they got a grant in the last 3 years. Is that kind of how you do it?
Yeah, so each district manages these grants for the communities within their district. And each district has allotted, a pool of funding. There is an application process to assure that the projects are appropriate for the type of investment we're wanting the towns to make with these monies. And it's like we sort of award one to every town over the series of years. And, after everybody's gotten one, then they're in line again to get their next one. And it takes about 3 years to get through that cycle. So it's not competitive in the sense that, every town is vying for the same pot of money every year. It's competitive in the sense that they have to come up with reasonable projects that would make the investment in the type of infrastructure that we have set aside these funds to advance. And we do have staff coming in tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow, who can explain in more detail the criteria and, what characteristics they're looking for in these grants.
Okay.
Just want to get through a rough draft today anyway, get through some of it. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Go ahead. All right, Anthea.
Okay. So now we're getting on to our initiatives related to vehicles. So section 8, and I think at this point it might be helpful for me to provide a little bit of clarification on the name for this program. And this continues to cause confusion. So new PEV incentive program. This is not a new program. It is only applicable for new vehicles. So this is a program that was created in the 2019 T-bill and it has since been sort of re-upped in its funding. So all that is really happening with this program, there are some small changes to eligibility and administration, but really what is happening in the version of the T-bill that came over from the House is more money is going to this existing program. In terms of that one pager that Chris had that summed up the 9.775 million, the new PEV incentive program is an existing program. Mileage Smart is an existing program. The emissions repair program is a program that was created 2 years ago and never got up and running. So it is not new in its existence, but it would be new if it did start giving out repair vouchers in its application. Replace Your Ride is a new program, and the e-bike incentives would be an addition to the PEV incentive program, but that would be a new initiative just for e-bikes. So the language that you're going to see that we're going to be going through over the next sections is either adding money to an existing program, getting a never up and running program, hopefully up and running and giving it a new bucket of money to pull from, or creating a new program and providing an authorization for it. And then the appropriation piece that comes from the big bill, this is all in that one-time section. So that's sort of a big picture of what we're going to be seeing in the next few sections.
In Section 8, can't we just call it new vehicle incentive program, new vehicles?
We could put that in there. The PEV includes vehicles. So if you were to write it all out, it would be the new plug-in electric vehicle incentive program.
Something like that.
One of the things that I've
So
brought
it's the vehicle that's new, not the program.
exactly.
The incentive program for new PEVs.
Yeah, maybe that would be a better order.
That's better, Andy, because it really, most of us would read it exactly what it is. It's a new program.
So
Are they running out of money? Is that why they're putting more into it?
Last I checked, I think it was down to 350,000, and that's from the 1 million that was added in October through the final version of the big bill last year. And I believe that didn't get started for a month or two. So 350,000 to get through the end of the fiscal year.
Not hard to give money away.
One of the things that I brought up in House Transportation and I've talked about with, Michelle and other people over at the agency is currently you've got all of these programs, they're all in session law. We keep on, as you're going to see, amending session law from 2019 in different ways, tinkering it ever so slightly. At some point, it might make sense to have a section in Title 23 or a chapter in Title 23 that deals with all of these different incentive programs. So it's one, easier to find the language, and two, you're not amending session law, which is much harder to track. I know the agency, and maybe this is something they'll testify on in your committee, has talked about trying to sort of bring the administration of this under a bit more of one umbrella. So it could be that a direction the General Assembly wants to go in next year would be kind of looking at all the programs and trying to consolidate them into actual codified law. And that would certainly be a great time to then provide clarification on the fact that it's not a new program, it's in codified law, it's printed in the green books. You can go back and actually see it. It's something that's easy to find on the website.
Maybe we should create a global program, something about financial incentives to reduce carbon, highway or transportation related carbon emissions. And then underneath that, then you have the different strategies, but rather than this ad hoc kind of approach.
Yeah, I think that might be something for future you to consider, but I think that would be a very logical next step now that these programs seem to be up and running, and then, slight changes, but not to the general structure that you've come up with, and then just adding money to them. So then it would just be a simple appropriation / authorization in the two bills. So what you're doing, or what the House is proposing you do with these programs. So Section 8, this is a $3.25 million authorization. Up to $250,000 would go to the agency's partnership with Drive Electric Vermont, and all of the remaining amount. So if only $240,000 goes to Drive Electric, it would be $3 million plus that would go to the actual incentives. So then at least $3 million is to go out in new incentives under this program, and we'll go through the criteria in a second just as a refresher. And one of the things that's new here is there is an authorization for up to 10% of that 3 million or 3 million plus amount to go towards administration expenses. I'm going to skip Section 9 just for 1 second, because I think in looking at this now, Section 10 and Section 9 should swap. Language that was included last year directed the agency to only administer the new PEV incentive program through no-cost contracts with the state's electric distribution utilities. It is my understanding that it is the agency's hope that they can continue to do that, but that it might not, as the program is getting larger, be feasible. So Section 10 is repealing that. The only way to administer this is through these no-cost contracts, and instead saying up to 10% can go to the administration expenses. So you're having a big pot of money, $3.25 million. $250,000 up to goes to Drive Electric for the partnership there. And then the remainder of that amount, which will be at least 3 million, slightly more if less goes to Drive Electric, would go to the incentives themselves. And then up to 10% of that could go to administration costs. But it doesn't say up to 10% needs to, it's just a ceiling. If the agency can negotiate zero cost contracts again, then that would be more money that could go to initiatives.
So that authorization, is it anticipated that would be to the distribution utilities?
I think that's an agency question.
What entity are we giving administrative dollars? We're giving 250 to Drive Vermont for administration, and then 10% for that you may use. I'm just wondering, are you getting pushback from the utilities? That their generosity is time limited? Who would you anticipate you would be spending the admin provision on? I haven't got a clue.
So Senator Mazza, if I may respond to Senator Kitchell, the distribution utilities have been very generous, and we've communicated through the beginning of the session, and they are all continuing to be willing to help us with the administration of the program. What their current role is they receive invoices from the dealerships who are issuing the incentive to the customers. They then cut a check back to the dealership to pay for the incentive, and then they bill the Agency of Transportation, and they also issue the 1099s that need to be associated with these incentive payments. So that has been their role. And the reason we brought them on in that role is with the limited amount of funds we had in the first rounds of this process, if we were to engage with Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, which is the umbrella for Drive Electric Vermont, they require, as part of their administrative overhead, that a percent of every incentive issued be paid as part of administration. And we felt that paying out dollars to VEIC for each incentive on top of any administrative funds we would have to do to get their staffing assistance was not a good use of our funds. And so we sought out assistance from the distribution utilities. They have indicated they would be willing to move forward in the same role they have now. We are a little bit concerned, depending on the scale of the program that we would be asking them to continue to administer, what kind of burden that would be upon them. And also, it's complicated right now with the two programs. We have the Mileage Smart and the new PEV program, where Drive Electric Vermont is doing outreach, education. You know, they're helping us with the guidance documents. They're doing a lot of the convening of the dealers and the distribution utilities. And so they're doing administrative functions for us. And we've cobbled together money for them to do that. But now we're going to potentially be also bringing on this Replace Your Ride program that you're going to be hearing about. And I honestly, for my staff and for program efficiency, would love to see us be in a position where we could find an entity that isn't going to charge us overhead to administer these programs that would have to come out of every incentive that we offered, in addition to the staffing of the administration of the programs. So I was waiting to see what the reaction of this committee is to our proposals. And then we plan to put out a request for information based on the direction we think we might be going, to see what we could get for an administrator and what kind of cost that would be, and bring everything under one umbrella. And then if we're able to do that, then we may not need to take advantage of the generosity of the distribution utilities and their role in this. We might be able to consolidate things a little bit. So that's where we stand.
Okay. So you're gonna, I understand their generosity, they help get it set up, but ongoing, you're gonna do an RFI and see if there's a way of supporting the program. All right, I thank you.
Let me ask a simple question here, and I figure if I can, if we're going to put out these charging stations, now say we go to Green Mountain Power, for example, or you can go a private person, they set one up and they charge like 5 cents a kilowatt hour or whatever. 100% of that money is going to them, to the people who put in a charging station.
So I think I can explain that, Senator Mazza. It kind of depends on the setup. So if you're going to a charge point commercial charging station located on North Winooski Avenue in Burlington,
Yeah.
ChargePoint has an arrangement whereby they are administering that location. They might have gotten a permit from the city to have that equipment there. They may own the equipment. They own the software that helps you to use your credit card, et cetera.
Yep.
And then they have an arrangement with Green Mountain Power, or in
Okay.
this case, Burlington Electric.
Yep.
So they're charging the customer whatever the cost of the power is, they have to pay BED
Right.
for.
Plus the profit.
And then they have the profit and the rest. And what we're going to be working on in the study that Joe Segali talked to you about relative to how we're going to collect money from people with electric vehicles.
Yep.
We're going to be working on a way to collect an increment of money at those charging stations for the T fund.
Right.
So that every public charging station, which is where our out-of-state visitors and other folks are going to likely be charging, it's going to be easy for us to collect that increment at those public charging stations and put it in the T fund. Now, we've already talked about we've got a variety of other things for persons charging at home that
Right.
we'll be coming back to you and talking about next session.
But on the highway, so the guy down the street, if he puts one in, he could be charging a nickel more per kilowatt and so
He
there's
can
not
charge
gonna be-
whatever he wants.
Okay,
yeah.
it's gonna be like gasoline stations,
Mhm.
but automatically so much will come to the state, whether it's 3 pennies or 2 pennies. And it'll be just like a gas station today. If you buy gasoline, whatever gallonage goes through that pumps, we get 10 cents or whatever it is a gallon. So that's the way it's going to be. And it'll be open market for competitiveness.
Yep.
They will pay for the infrastructure of the meter. They will pay all that.
Yep.
Okay. And they will acknowledge when they're buying it what the price is, so they can be competitive to other charging.
Yeah, that's the part we need to get in place so that
Uh-huh.
everybody knows when they pull up how
Right.
much they're being charged, because they don't know right now.
Right. That's
The
right.
other thing we need to get in place is just like weights and measures, checks
Right.
your gas pumps and make
Make
sure
sure
they're
they don't.
delivering you a gallon. We need to make sure that you're getting delivered a kilowatt hour.
Right. Okay. That's basically the structure. Okay. Thank you. Oh, good. Okay. Go ahead.
So I can continue with the walkthrough if there aren't any more
Go ahead.
questions on
Yep.
this. Okay.
Yep.
So the next section that you're going to see in the T-bill, this is section 9, is making small changes to the income eligibility for the new PEV incentive program. And I think it's probably easier to look at this in chart form and not statutory language form. So this is the current structure. And you'll see for individuals, depending on your filing status, and married, depending on your filing status, there are 2 different tiers of incentives that you can qualify for. So there is a lower income, higher incentive, and those are at $3,000 for the plug-in hybrid electric, or $4,000 for the battery electric or all electric vehicle. And then the higher income, lower incentive amount, those are $1,500 and $2,500. If you look at the chart as it exists now, all of those lower income, higher incentive amounts cap at 50,000 or less adjusted gross income, without regard to whether or not you are a married couple or an individual. And this is linked to your tax filing adjusted gross income status. What the language in section 9 would do is change the $50,000 amounts in the instances where you are filing as an individual surviving spouse or a married filing jointly, and it would be increasing the ceiling for which you qualify for the larger incentive amount to $75,000 as opposed to the $50,000 amount. So it's still, the program is capping out at 100,000 adjusted gross income for individual, 125,000 adjusted gross income for married, and it's just having that higher incentive amount tier be available to a slightly larger proportion of individuals. And I believe Michelle has information about what this would do in terms of who would qualify in terms of portion of the population. But that's the change in chart form that you are seeing in section 9.
So
And it's
what's the policy, going back to the chart? If I'm single because I'm a widow, I'm glad it's not just a widower, surviving spouse versus an individual. Why is there a policy distinction between an individual versus a surviving spouse?
I am going to need to consult with my colleague Abby Shepherd. She looked at this language last year when it was included and those different tiers were put in place. But I think it has to do with when you can file as an individual surviving spouse and it only being in proximity to when you previously had been filing.
Okay, all right. It's sort of a time limited status
I
before you
believe
flip.
so.
Okay, all right. It was just kind of interesting. Also, the first chart talked about widower, and this is surviving spouse because
I
I
can only
generally-
take credit for the second chart.
yeah. uh-huh.
I did not prepare the first one. Okay, so that's what's happening in section 9. I can go back to the language or if there are questions.
Questions? Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, so going back, that will take us through the sections related to the new PEV incentive program. We talked about the repeal for the administration, the zero cost with the distribution utilities. This takes us to section 11, which is Mileage Smart. There are no changes at all that are happening to the Mileage Smart program. For people who are new to the committee and as a refresher to those of you who helped create the program, this is the one for used vehicles. This is linked to qualification for weatherization services, which is tiered to household size. This is currently administered through Capstone. I believe you got a report on the number of initiatives that they've given out over the course of the program, which did have a delayed start due to administration and then COVID and timing there. So no changes are being made to the program. The incentive amounts will stay the same. The income eligibility will stay the same. All that is happening here is there's an additional authorization, which is linked to the appropriation in the big bill of $600,000. It is estimated that there will be a carry forward of, I believe, $400,000. That is something that was already addressed in the prior T-bill, so you don't need to authorize the carry forward. So plus the 600,000 will create a pot of money of about $1 million. And there is up to 10% of the total amount that is distributed in incentives available for costs associated with administering Mileage Smart. So if all $1 million with the carry forward and the new 600,000 goes out in incentives in fiscal year 2022, you're looking at the 10% being off that 1 million amount. If only the carry forward amount is put out in incentives, then it would be 10% of that about $400,000 amount. So that's what's happening in section 11. And this is, as Chris's chart showed, not something that was included in the governor's recommend for that $5 million pot of money. This was something that was added by House Transportation.
Questions? Okay.
Okay, so that takes us to the emissions repair program. As a refresher for those who were on the committee and helped create this program, and for those of you who are new, the emissions repair program was going to be part of Mileage Smart. It was going to be a point of repair vouchers. This would have been linked to qualification or services under LIHEAP, so a third type of income eligibility criteria there. So what's happening in sections 12, 13, and 14 is it is pulling out from the existing session law anything that is related to the emissions repair program. And then it's going to get added again in section 15. So you'll see instances on lines 11 and 13, where instead of it saying programs to be both Mileage Smart and this emissions repair program, it's just program, singular for Mileage Smart. The language that is being deleted, sort of the bulk of the emissions repair program, you're going to see at the bottom of page 15 into page 16. This is the structure of the program as it was created in 2019. You'll see in language that's being struck out that it was linked to LIHEAP, Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. you'll see that the point of repair vouchers, we're going to be going out through the community action networks. That is the only piece that is changed in the language that's going to be added. And now I'm going to scroll down to that since it's much easier to read than what's being struck through. So section 15, this is where you're adding the program back. Differences are going to be that it is now the Agency of Transportation and the Department of Environmental Conservation that will establish and administer the repair program. And then we're going to go through things that haven't changed from the original inception. It would apply to repairs of certain vehicles that failed the onboard diagnostic or the OBD systems inspection. That's the check engine light part of the inspection. It would still be a point of repair voucher. Base eligibility for the voucher would still be based on LIHEAP. It would still, and this is in subdivision 3, provide a point of repair voucher to repair a motor vehicle that was ready for testing. Failed the OBD systems inspection, requires repairs that are not under warranty. That's significant because of the types of warranties that we're able to have on cars in Vermont through Clean Air Act and piggybacking off of what's done in California. Will be able to pass the state's vehicle inspection once the repairs are made. So if, for example, there are a bunch of safety inspection things that would lead to the failure of the vehicle, those would potentially take the vehicle out of eligibility. And the repairs, the amount of the repair voucher, and again, this is the same as has existed for the 2 years that the program had been created, but not actually up and running, would not be able to exceed $2,500 for that repair voucher. And that $2,500 repair voucher would be linked to the value of the vehicle, and it wouldn't be available for the $2,500 ceiling unless the fair market value of the car was at least $5,000. Purposes of money for this program, the authorization, and then you're going to see the appropriation in that one time in the big bill is $375,000. That has up to $50,000 being available for startup costs and outreach education, and up to $32,500 available for costs associated with developing and administering the program.
So the money is in the Agency of Transportation, and then there would be a transfer. You've got both the agency and the department are authorized, but the appropriation actually goes to the agency.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my understanding, and I think you're going to get testimony from both DEC and the Department of Motor Vehicles, both on what's involved in this program, is how they would see it being administered. And I believe they would use a contractor for it.
Well, if they're using a contractor,
Wow.
why do you have both the agency and the department there? I mean, they both are not going to be issuing a contract. It looks a little strange to have an appropriation go to two agencies.
You could certainly have it just be the Agency of Transportation in consultation with DEC, as the way the other programs are set up. If you didn't want it there, I think some of the motivation.
Well, I'm just thinking from a fiscal perspective, from accounting. Normally, we make an appropriation to a specific entity, and then if they have transfer or if you're going to contract it out, I've never known of two departments issuing a single contract. I just think we need to look at that relative to our standard way of appropriating and accounting.
And I think the more standard way would be to have it be just to one of the two.
I would think so. That's my instinct. But Chris can check on that.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're getting into new programs, the Replace Your Ride program. This would be the Agency of Transportation in consultation with the Departments of Environmental Conservation and of Public Service. It would expand upon the existing vehicle incentive programs. It would be known as the Replace Your Ride program. That's the establishment of the program in subsection A. Subsection B, the incentive amount. The incentive would provide up to, so that's the max amount, $3,000 incentive. It could be stacked with any of the other available incentives including ones that are funded through the state. So you could stack it on the new PEV incentive program, you could stack it on Mileage Smart. Unlike those programs that are just based on income eligibility, these incentives are linked to income and the removal of an internal combustion vehicle. And we'll get to what removal means. There is only one incentive for individual or married couple available under the Replace Your Ride program. And it's provided on a first come, first served basis once the program is operational. Eligibility, applicants need to qualify through both income and the removal of a vehicle. Income eligibility is, and this is in subdivisions C1A, B, C, and D, exactly the same as the lower income, higher incentive rows in the chart that we looked at previously. And this also reflects those amendments to raise it to 75,000 for the married or surviving spouse. And you also could qualify through the same criteria for Mileage Smart, which is linked to weatherization. So you could qualify under two different sort of frameworks that already exist under programs that already exist.
Can you go back? I'm losing it. The 3,000 incentive is to get rid of your regular car.
We haven't gotten to what it is for yet. But
And one incentive, I'm just wondering, what are we giving you an incentive to do? What if I say, oh yeah, I'm going to get rid of my car, and 6 months later I decide, well, I'm sick of public transit or something. And so I'm going to, I'm going to go get myself a vehicle. I'm not clear what the incentive is to do. So I guess I'm ahead of the language.
you're ahead, and you're also ahead a little bit of the language that we've gotten to, and the language in general, because some of the details have not been fleshed out. For example, if you have your vehicle disposed of as required under the program, and you're going to use public transit, the logistics of that are not included in here. That's left to the entity that administers the program.
So I have two vehicles, very over 10 years old. So I say, look, I'm going to get rid of one, and I'll want my 3,000 incentive, but I'll continue to use my other one.
So the incentive would need to go to an eligible swap. So you would either need to be putting that $3,000, it's up to $3,000 towards buying a new vehicle that is a plug-in electric vehicle, or public transit's not included in here, in part because of public transit being free at present, but using ride shares or vehicles for hire like a taxi cab, or getting an electric motorcycle or an electric bicycle. So those are the swaps.
You can get you an electric bicycle now, Jane. There you go. Motorcycle.
Right. I need an electric hoe. That's what I need for my garden. Okay. All right. So I could swap out my old car and get an e-bike and come out 3,000 ahead. Oh no, I've got to meet an income test.
You have to meet an income test.
Yeah.
And then also it's up to $3,000. So it remains to be seen, if this is enacted, what the incentive amounts are as the program is rolled out. So it could be that maybe an e-bike, the incentive is capped at $1,000, just to pick a number that's under 3,000. So vehicle removal. So in order for an applicant to qualify under the vehicle removal side, so let's assume they qualified under income, now we're getting to the removal side. You need to remove an older, low efficiency vehicle from operation and switch to a mode of transportation that produces fewer greenhouse gas emissions. And then it's really left to sort of the administrating entity to figure this all out. The entity that administers the Replace Your Ride program in conjunction with the Agency of Transportation shall establish program guidelines that specifically provide for how someone can show that the vehicle removal eligibility requirement has been or will be met. So some of the details are just not on the page. So for purposes of making that removal swap, an older low efficiency vehicle is defined as being one that is currently registered and has been for 2 years prior to the date of application with the Vermont Department of Motor Vehicles. is currently titled in the name of the applicant and has been for at least 1 year prior to the date of application, has a gross vehicle weighting of 10,000 pounds or less, is at least 10 model years old, has an internal combustion engine, and passed the annual inspection, both OBD and safety, within the prior year. So that's the vehicle that now then needs to be removed. Removing the vehicle needs to be done by disabling the vehicle's engine from further use and fully dismantling the vehicle for either donation to a nonprofit organization to be used for parts or destruction. And then subdivision 3 little i's, that's going to be the following are going to qualify as your swaps: purchasing or leasing a new or used PEV, purchasing a new or used bicycle or motorcycle that is fully electric, or utilizing shared mobility services or privately operated vehicles for hire. You'll note that it doesn't say public transit in here. It did in an earlier version. House Transportation took that out because of public transit potentially, and you'll see language on this a little bit later, being zero fare for all of fiscal year 2022. So that's the swap side of things. And then the last piece here, and then I'll take down the screen so you can see each other. The agency is authorized to spend up to $1.5 million in one-time transportation fund monies, and then up to $300,000 of that $1.5 million is available for startup costs, outreach, education, and costs associated with developing and administering the program. And that is the same as the governor's recommend.
This program was recommended by the governor then.
This is a program that was included in both H94, the Transportation Modernization Act, and then there are small changes, but for the most part, what was in H94 is very similar to the first version of the language that was proposed by the governor.
Question.
Yes, Senator Chittenden.
So I saw what you just presented, Anthea, as some qualifications to be more highly considered for this program, including the less of fuel efficient vehicles that are much older stock that are on our roadways to achieve the objective of reducing our carbon emissions. I'm going to go back to my previous question that you presented on with the EV incentive programs. Have we considered tying those EV incentives towards vehicles that you put more miles on our roadways? I was just doing a quick Google search, and the average consumer puts about 12,000 miles on their car each year, but average fleet vehicles are averaging about 25,000 or twice as many. Has there been any consideration in the EV qualification for the EV benefits to tie it to owners that intend, based on their usage, if they're Uber drivers, to qualify for more qualify for EV benefits to electrify the fleets that are putting more miles on our roadways?
So I can't speak to any considerations or thought that the agency has put into this, and I can't speak to House Transportation except for when I've been there, and I have not heard that discussed when I've been in House Transportation.
How would you verify that, Senator Chittenden? How would I go in and tell someone that I'm going to put more miles on, or how would you prove that?
So that's where it gets into the legal thing, and I'd ask
Okay.
Michelle Boomhauer if we have other references where we have people fill out qualifying forms saying what the use of the vehicle is going to be, if it is going to be a fleet purchase with a stated commercial purpose. So I don't know how these things
All right.
work.
Well,
Yeah.
sure. Okay, good.
I'm trying to align what replace your ride with smart Mileage Smart. Mileage Smart has conditions and it provides incentives for a plug-in electric. Replace Your Ride has incentives, and you can swap out, and included in one of the things you can swap is buying a new vehicle. So I'm just trying to crosswalk what one does versus the other.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, especially with all the programs and how they get sort of commingled. The new PEV incentive program and Mileage Smart the only requirement there is income. You don't have to have a change in behavior. So these programs are available to maybe someone who wants to choose to swap their vehicle for another vehicle. Maybe they're going to sell their older vehicle and buy a new vehicle, or maybe it's someone who doesn't have a vehicle at all. Replace Your Ride has that 2-tier piece to it, where you need to qualify based on income, and then there actually needs to be the removal of a vehicle. So you
But you said
could-
you could swap it for buying a new vehicle.
right, so,
That's,
but you don't need to. So someone could, like, it's like a square and a rectangle. So you could qualify for the new PV incentive program or Mileage Smart. That's your rectangle. And you might also qualify for Replace Your Ride, but you're only going to qualify for Replace Your Ride if you already own a vehicle that you can dispose of in the way that's required under the program. So the criteria to qualify are more stringent or more narrow than the other two programs. But if you qualified for Replace Your Ride, you could stack that incentive with the incentives that are available under the other programs. So you could avail yourself of multiple
Okay.
programs.
I guess that's really what I'm asking is how they, okay.
Yeah, so it could be that you only qualify for one, but it could be that you qualify for all three.
I'm glad I don't have to take a test on that.
Me either.
Senator Ingalls, you're reporting that section.
Yeah.
through.
I'm telling you what, we're gonna be in trouble. My eyes are about crossed on this one. I'm gonna have to go some extra tutelage.
Oh,
Pretty soon we're gonna give you a car if it's electric. We're gonna give it to you free.
Oh,
oh, I'm exhausted and it's only
Yeah.
11:48.
yeah.
So how much
Um,
longer we got, Anthea?
So there are two more grant programs. And then we could totally stop. I think those will be pretty quick.
Okay. let's
and
do
then
those.
you will have gotten through the majority of the bill.
Okay,
at that point.
thank you. Okay.
Okay, so the next one I think is pretty short. This is your electric bicycle incentive. We talked about this a little bit earlier. It's a $200 incentive available to 250 individuals. It would apply to new motor assisted bicycles that contain an electric motor. And one of the things that I'm going to flag for you, as well as I flagged this for House Transportation, is if S66, that was your e-bike bill, passes, then I think you'll want to change this language to just reference that new definition to make sure that you're describing the type of vehicle that you intend to. It would be available to all
Oh, wait.
Vermonters.
Oh. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Oh. Yeah, there is an interrelationship, but okay.
So I
Mm.
think two options would be, don't include any reference to 23 VSA section 445, just say to electric bicycles and hope that everyone knows what you're talking about. You could pull in the definition that you had in S66 for electric bicycles, or you could put a pin in it, wait to see what happens with S66. And then if S66 passes, change this to 23 VSA section 4 subdivision 46. which
So
would-
why are we doing electric bicycles? Because we have other categories like mopeds. So we would not give you an incentive to buy a moped, but we would to do an electric bicycle.
Under this program, you could get an incentive for an electric bicycle. Under Replace Your Ride, you could get an incentive for a fully electric motorcycle,
Got that, Russ?
presumably a fully electric moped as well. So this is another one of those instances where if you were getting your e-bike, maybe you could stack an incentive, whereas if you were getting an electric motorcycle, you wouldn't be able to stack the incentive.
So why even do a separate incentive? Just make it, as long as an e-bike is covered under a benefit under Swap Your Ride.
So a policy decision that was made by House Transportation. This was language that it was included in H94, the Transportation Modernization Act. One of the things that, going back to the complicated square rectangle thing, this could be something that an individual who had a car, they didn't want to get rid of their car, they didn't want to make a swap, but they also wanted to have an electric bicycle. Maybe this is the program for them, but Replace Your Ride would not be the program for them.
Got that, Gene?
I think
Yeah,
Senator Chittenden ought to report this one.
Yeah. He's an environmentalist. We'll take him.
And but if you do a self-propelled bike, you get nothing.
Correct. No incentive for going and buying a bike that you pedal.
No,
fully
or a
with the roll
tricycle, tricycle.
So for income eligibility, this would be linked to any qualification under the new PEV incentive program. So the higher income, anything on that chart that we had up before, it's done by self-certification. The authorization is $50,000. There is nothing in here for administrative expenses. It just covers the $250, $200 incentives. And this is something that was added by House Transportation. It was not included in the governor's recommend for that.
Who administers
5 million.
this?
It is the Agency of Transportation in consultation with the electric distribution utilities.
Oh, so we're gonna take away the the Drive Vermont and give them something else to administer. Oh, all right.
Where's the
What
good
the
old
Lord
days?
giveth, the Lord taketh
Where's
away.
the good old
Huh?
days? We used to straight
Yeah.
pipe that diesel up in the sky, you know what I mean?
Oh, man. Oh,
I'll have a short-lived transportation career if I have to report that, because I'm gonna refer it back to the chair, and then I'm done.
Oh, boy, the good old days again. Okay, Anthea, what do you got? Another one?
Okay, one more.
Okay.
This is language that has been modified slightly just through the process in House Transportation, but is otherwise very, very similar to what the governor recommended. It would be $1 million to build on the existing Volkswagen EVSE grant program, and EVSE is the technical term for a charging station. There have been multiple iterations of grant funding that has gone out through the VW EVSE grant program. It's sort of targeted different areas of needing to have more charging infrastructure. This one is available for MUDs, multi-unit dwellings, which is defined in section 1, and it's defined as a housing project such as cooperatives, condominiums, dwellings, or mobile home parks with 10 or more units constructed or maintained on a tract or tracts of land. One of the unique things about this grant program in this iteration is it would be treated as a pilot program. And then for purposes of the grant awards, there would need to be a consideration of broad geographic distribution as well as service models ranging from restricted private parking to publicly accessible parking, so as to examine multiple strategies to increase access to EVSE. So it could be at an apartment building that only residents have access to. It could be at a apartment building that's maybe in a downtown and it's available to members of the public during the day. So there are different approaches that the agency, in consultation with its interagency team, which exists and is how these programs have been administered in the past, to look at those different distribution models.
so we had AOT actually paid a consultant to put together what would be a statewide system of charging stations. Did that plan get into this level of detail in terms of where level 2 chargers should be? Maybe that's a question for Michelle.
I can assure you it is not a question for me.
I don't remember them doing such a study.
Oh,
Michelle,
yeah, it was, they had a consultant that they hired to look at the network. I think that's where identification of the level 3 fast charge, where locations, et cetera. I thought that, I can't remember the name of the consulting group, but was it a local engineering group? I can't remember, Michelle. Is my memory faulty?
No, Senator Kitchell, you're correct. We have done analyses of where to place these charging stations, and the outcome of that initial work was to develop the fast charging network, which would deploy a fast charger within roughly 30 miles of every Vermonter on the highway network. And we have not moved to the next level, which is how do we now continue to build out the system in addition to the highway network at workplace charging, at multifamily.
So you've answered my
units.
question. It only was at that
Yeah.
upper level. It's not at the level 2. I didn't know whether it was instructive relative to any of the language that was here in the bill. That was all I was asking. And so it's not. All right.
Okay. Anything else, Cynthia?
The last thing here is just that the Department of Housing and Community Development would need to file a written report on the outcomes of the pilot program with the 2 transportation committees not later than January 15th of 2022.
It seems like 10 units. I don't know. In other words, if you live in a 4 unit, you're out of luck.
You can't imagine 10 units and the fighting is going to be over who's going to have their car parked in that charging unit. There's going to be some bickering there, let me tell you.
Yeah. For
I can
sure.
see that now. Well, especially when you
Well-
don't plug them.
Unless the unit has got individual, I imagine metering, I don't know, and,
You'd have to have a lot of different plugins, I'm sure, because they're going to be,
Yeah.
people are going to leave their car there overnight or every kind of thing that's going to happen.
uh-huh.
And we're charging
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, right. And you gotta have 220 line for
Yeah.
level 2.
Okay, well, I think we've covered enough this morning. I thank you, Anthea, for everything, and Michelle, and we'll continue our discussion tomorrow. Any other, yes, anything else? Any questions before the, well, thank you. It's been a full morning. You can have your lunch and get ready for the
No,
one.
I've got another meeting.
Okay, jump right on another meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks, folks.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
See ya.